Building a rubber band powered airplane that flies so smoothly in the air is a lot simpler than you think. Get your materials in order and 3, 2, 1, let's begin. Alright, so as you all know, we are going to use a plastic drinking straw as the main body of the aircraft. So this is just a plastic straw that I got from, I have no idea, but you've seen straws before, and I'm going to be using this as my primary tool, essentially the body of the aircraft. And what I like about this is it's pretty nice. There's some straws out there which are pretty loose and weak, so I would recommend you to not pick those. But this has a nice hollow area where you'll have your rubber bands go through and they can spin without any tension. So this is gonna be the fuselage, so that's about it. We're gonna be making the propeller now. And to make the propeller, I'm gonna be using a pop bottle, like a pop bottle can. And this material is really good, especially because it has a nice curvature. It's firm, so you can wind it a lot of times and it's not gonna get fatigued. So I'm gonna use my X-Acto knife and cut out the rims and just come up with a flat sheet. Yeah, definitely want to point out that when you're working with pop bottle cans, you have to be super careful because these edges or these corners might injure you pretty bad. And yeah, just want to be careful. So now we have that sheet. I'm just going to cut out some rough rectangles, and from there I'm going to create the propeller blades. So these are going to be the propeller blades, and this project is going to be pure manual inspection, so I have no set of plans, no any sort of planned script that I'm saying to you, or it's just going to be on the go. So you just want to follow me, and your version is going to be a little different than mine, and that is absolutely fine. You just want to keep the principles working in order. So this fuselage is pretty small. If I just use my cutting mat ruler, it's only 21.5 centimeters in length. So it's not a huge fuselage. And for that respect, you don't want to create a jumbo propeller. It cannot be too big. So you want to keep the ratio, like this could be the size of the propeller right there, maybe a little bigger. So again, manual inspection. I'm just going to cut out a rough curvature of the propeller. And it's always better to cut extra than to cut less, because you can always trim out more as needed. And this is about as much I'll go, and if I just take my straw, it looks like a really nice half propeller, and I want to just smoothen out this little pointy bit because you don't want to strike anything. Right, so that looks a fairly good propeller to me, and once again the pop bottle can gives you that beautiful curvature, so when the propeller is rotating it's going to help catch the air a lot better. So I'm going to use this as my reference to create the other side of the blade, so just placing it on top and just working my way. So there you go, both the identical propeller blades. If there's a part of you that really wants to make sure this project turns out to be successful, let me tell you now, these propeller blades need to be as identical as possible. So over the years, I've noticed that if these blades are a bit off, so let's say this particular blade is just a little bit wider than this one, right? So they're not gonna have the right amount of mass, and they're not going to have the right cross-sectional area. So when they're spinning, you're gonna have one a bit off than the other, and that's what's gonna create the vibration, and that's essentially what's gonna cause your airplane to act very bad, right? So you wanna try your best and just do all the carving necessary to make sure that both the blades look very same or close to 98% or whatever. you want to make sure these are very identical. That's all I want to say. So we have the propeller blades. Where do we stick these on? I'm going to take a barbecue stick and essentially I'm going to cut out a small strip. Let's say perhaps maybe like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's going to be 5 centimeters, and let me use my X-Acto knife to cut it out. It's always nice to use a twisting motion like this. I mean a rolling motion, and then you can just snap it off. I see a lot of people trying to use their scissors to snap it and like it just cracks in half. But speaking of cracking it in half, we are gonna do to this particular piece. So this barbecue stick is super heavy, right? You might not know, but in this project, we wanna really ensure that all the things that we're doing, we're using minimal weight. So the best way to crack this in half is to use your plier and just pinch the tip of it. As you pinch the tip of it, it's gonna crack a little. You can use your X-Acto knife, place it in the middle, and you just wanna rock it back and forth and just hit it, and that's about it. So simple. So now this piece is halved and the mass is also half, which is great. And if you've never built a propeller before, a propeller is not just a flat sheet. It's not like that. A propeller needs to have a bit of a twist. So like if you look from the top, it's gonna have that bit of an angle, and as it spins, that's what's gonna help you catch the air and generate the thrust. So in order for us to do that, I'm gonna first measure the half of this piece. So if it's 5, roughly 2.5. And I'm gonna measure 0.5 centimeters away from the middle. That just gives me the reference as to where these blades are going to stick. So the hot glue is heating up, and while it's heating up, I'm gonna prepare the propeller bearing. So I have a paper clip, and I'm just gonna simply unbend it. Essentially, we need a straight piece of aluminum. You could use an aluminum wire of any sort, and so I'm just gonna use maybe this much and trim out unnecessary bits. And you wanna make this piece super straight. So do your best and try to make sure that it's super straight, because again, this is one of the sources of the vibrations that you have on the propeller, and we want to minimize that because that's waste energy, right? Right, after you have the straight piece, take about 1/2 inch or maybe 3/4 of an inch and just make a perpendicular bend. And this piece is gonna stick right on top of the barbecue stick on the middle. So I'm just gonna make a little reference mark as to where the middle is, because it's gonna stick onto the flat side of this barbecue stick, just like that, somehow. So now I'm gonna use a bit of my hot glue. You wanna make sure you use very little hot glue, because hot glue is a heavy material, or apparatus, I don't know what you call that, but because if you're adding extra weight, it's just extra mass and it's not gonna give you any better performance, and the best thing we can do is minimize that. Once you have the structure ready, what you don't wanna do is put more hot glue, but what you do wanna do is take the nozzle of your hot glue and just spread it around the sides, or kind of like the waste sides of the hot glue, and just spread it across and around the aluminum wire. So we're kind of reusing the hot glue that's kind of sticking out, and yeah, we're not adding anything extra. Right, in the next step, we're gonna add a plastic bead. So I got some plastic beads with me, and of course, we don't wanna choose a super big plastic bead. I'm gonna be using this little plastic bead. Many people often comment on my videos, what if you don't have plastic beads? What you can do is take a small piece of popsicle stick, drill a hole through it. That may not work as efficiently as a plastic bead, but will surely get the job done. So we're gonna pass this plastic bead through the aluminum wire, and this is just gonna stick on top of it. So I'm gonna apply just a little bit of hot glue. It doesn't have to be too crazy, and just pass it in through, making sure the aluminum wire is perpendicular to the barbecue stick. Right, so now we have the platform for the propeller, it's time to stick the blades on top of it. Here I have the blades. And the first step is simple. You just want to stick it on top. And we need to establish that curvature, so you don't want to stick it like this, but more like this, if that makes sense. So I'm going to apply a little bit of hot glue. Again, you don't want to go crazy. Because trust me, more hot glue is more weight. It's not a better performance. And just stick this onto the barbecue stick. Looking at this angle, make sure it's pointing towards the tip. And also making sure that when you're watching it from the top angle, that you have that bit of curvature on that propeller blade. So this is how it looks like when you're holding it like so. And the other blade, so when you're twisting it, it needs to have that same shape. So you just want to maintain that, like that. On another day, I would basically use more hot glue towards the sides and try to strengthen this bond together, but trust me, this step is not required. As you add more hot glue, you're just adding more weight and you're just putting more pressure on the propeller as it's trying to spin. So your propeller is basically done. Another way to verify if you built your propeller the right way is to just simply spin it. So just spin it and you should be able to feel air thrusting back, which means you've built this right way. Or you could even just toss this up in the air and just drop it and it should basically spin and fall down from the ceiling, if that makes sense. So whatever. What we want to do now is to mount this propeller onto the fuselage. So I'm going to use a popsicle stick and just using a small strip or like a small piece, just like so. And we want to establish a small hole on it. So just use your X-Acto knife and just basically make a hole. You can even use a push pin to try to puncture a hole, and that might just work out for you. Right, so once you've established a hole on the popsicle stick, you want to take a propeller and pass that through that popsicle stick. And this popsicle stick, the purpose of this popsicle stick is to just provide a bit of friction-free, like a friction-free platform so that when your propeller is having a lot of pressure from the front and it can just spin without any drag. So now what we want to do is create a small bearing, like a hook, right? So this is what we're going to do, and just going to pinch this so that it's small enough that it spins inside the plastic straw. So anytime you feel that the propeller is not spinning freely, that means that propeller, the popsicle stick hole is not big enough. So what you can do to enlarge it is just simply do this rocking motion, this twisting motion, and that's just going to enlarge the gap in between, and now your propeller can spin freely. So now this hook is going to go through that plastic straw, and we're going to hot glue this popsicle stick on that straw. But before we do that, we need to pass our rubber bands through it, right? So I'm going to use maybe 2 of these rubber bands. You can use basically any rubber band. It doesn't have to be super strong because this is a fairly small model. So we're going to hook the rubber band onto the propeller and pass that rubber band through the plastic straw. And the easiest way you can do this is by just taking a barbecue stick and basically just pushing this rubber band through the plastic straw. Oops, let's try that again. Just pushing it through until it comes out from the other side. Yep, just like that. Gonna pass it all the way out. And to catch that rubber band, I'm gonna take a little strip of barbecue stick. Just place it on there. And it should be good. We can make this a little smaller. And to help secure it in place, I'm gonna use some hot glue. One thing you have to keep in mind is that this is a plastic straw and you don't want to use super hot glue. I'm using the Stanley Dual Melt Pro hot glue. It's set to low, so it's not really burning the straw. So you can rotate the propeller and it's going to create a bit of a tension. Now that's going to help me to stick my propeller onto my popsicle stick onto this plastic straw. So I'm going to hold this nice and firm, apply a bit of hot glue. Might as well just use another piece of popsicle stick, kind of spread that glue around and just hold it in place. So to make the body, I'm going to be using these styrofoam plates. What I like about this material, it's super durable, super light. So if you're making this for the first time, you're going to crash this like a billion times and you're not going to regret because this thing's not going to get damaged very easily. It's pretty durable. And I'm going to take two at a time and cut out the rim. So once again, take your X-Acto knife and just carve out the edges. So when you have this circular piece, you want to cut out rectangles from this piece. So I'm just going to take my ruler, measure a straight 8 centimeters, and again, using manual inspection, so the measurements are completely up to you. So once you've established your beautiful rectangle, you just want to trace that on top of these other pieces and just have a bunch of rectangles. So what I'm thinking of doing is having one piece sit in the middle and two of these flaps are gonna be in a dihedral like so. And we can always optimize our performance in the air, and to do that, we're gonna establish an airfoil shape. And an airfoil shape is essentially a curve on the wing, which is gonna help your model catch some lift. And the easiest way to do it with this thin piece of foam is to just use your fingers and establish a curvature. It doesn't have to be a super sharp curve, just have a bit of a curvature. Just like that. Once you have that beautiful curve, you want to repeat that on the other pieces as well. So once you've established these beautiful foam curves, we're going to stick these together. And if you noticed, with the curves, it's not going to really stick properly. And in order to fix that, what we can do with these, we can just curve out a little bit of curve, just like that, on both the sides. Just a little bit. And if you just cut that, that's going to help you to stick both the pieces like so. So So I'm going to use a very thin bead of hot glue. It doesn't have to be crazy. And just stick these on together. Be sure to include that bit of dihedral and just do your best to make sure that it's the same on both the sides. And it always helps from the top angle to really make sure that both the angles are really nice and symmetrical, because you're going to have funny characteristics in the air if they're not the same. There you go. So the wing is ready, and we're not going to directly mount on top of the fuselage. We're going to add a bit of a height, which is known as the angle of attack, which is going to further improve the characteristics in the air. So as you can see, we've established this beautiful height for the wing, and it's not really a symmetric curve. It has a bit of an upward angle, and that's essentially what an angle of attack means. So when this sits on top of the fuselage, it's going to have an upward angle, which is going to help your plane get some more lift. So now I'm going to use my hot glue to stick this thing onto the fuselage. Later, we'll need to adjust by putting some weights on the nose and the tail or whatever, but for now, it's fairly forward, closer to the propeller. And this is when you just want to be a little bit more generous with the hot glue, because this piece is supporting the entire wing, and you want to put more hot glue onto the area between the fuselage and the wing plate. So our model is almost complete, we just have to put a little tail. Now with the tail, you really want to make sure that it sits really nice and parallel to the back edge of the wing. So just look at it from the front angle and adjust the angles, making sure that it is parallel to the wing. And also from the top angle, this needs to be parallel to the wing. Now all that's left is to do the rudder. And you want to be fairly long with the rudder. Oops, that was bad. So I can make this the rudder. Almost looks like a sailboat. Yeah, that's too gigantic. That looks better. Again, very thin slice of hot glue. And this rudder is not really a rudder now, it's just the vertical stabilizer. But as you'll see, we will add a rudder later on in the tutorial. So the point of having this vertical stabilizer, it's gonna basically vertically stabilize your plane when it's flying. So the plane's not gonna fly in a very weird angle. This thing's gonna help your plane stay nice and straight and true. And with that, you're done with your aircraft. Balancing your plane is one of the most important things about flight. You can put 2 of your fingers under the wing around 33% away from the leading edge, and it looks like the plane is a little tail heavy. And in order for me to fix that, I'm going to use 2 pieces of screws, and I'm going to wrap a piece of tape around the nose, and that's going to act as a primary source of the nose weight. You can use any other object such as coin or Play-Doh, but essentially after adding this nose weight, the plane now looks a lot more balanced. Before you go for flight, you want to wind the propeller and check if air is thrusting backwards. Now it's time for the first flight, and it looks like the plane is drifting a bit towards the left. So in order for us to fix that, I'm going to make a little rudder. So I'm just cutting out a little strip of styrofoam plate, and this little strip is just going to stick to the vertical stabilizer of the aircraft. I'm using a little piece of tape, and since the plane was drifting towards the left, this rudder is going to point towards the right, and that's going to help the plane adjust towards the x-axis. You can try to play around with the rudder, and you can even try to get the plane fly back to you.